your weekend roundup of news and chat. You're listening to Saturday Morning Live on Southeast Radio.
And you're very welcome back to the programme, 9 minutes past 11 o'clock now. Now, did you know that a well-known Christmas carol, which is heard on radio stations and on television the world over, and which has been performed by the likes of Tom Jones and Julie Andrews, was written right here in County Wexford? Well, truth be known, I didn't know about it. But anyway, luckily for me, I met earlier this week with someone who knows a lot more about it. Aileen Lambert is a traditional singer, researcher and documentary maker, and I met her earlier this week in Enniscorthy Cathedral, the venue where the carol was symbolically first performed. Aileen, we're here in the magnificence of Enniscorthy Cathedral. We have this story about the Wexford Carol, and no one better than yourself to explain a little bit more about it. Where did this thing originate from? What's it all about?
Very good question, John. Look, at every year in the run-up to Christmas, I would hear this song on the radio. The Wexford Carol. For a start, when they'd say the Wexford Carol, I'd go, I think I've heard it called the Enniscorthy Christmas Carol, and I'd be interested to see what they might say about it, because the same little bit of information seemed to be put out about it the whole time, and they never had any more background to it. So there was a funding opportunity for me. Creative Places Enniscorthy funded me to do this documentary, which was brilliant because it meant I had the time to look into the actual origin of it. So the first thing that I knew was when it was first printed. So Paddy Berry had actually given me a copy of the book. And the title, interestingly, was A County Wexford Christmas Carol. So it wasn't tying it down to Wexford Town, like town people might think, or anywhere else. Anyway, the next time it was printed as a Wexford Carol, the Wexford Carol, and the next time it was printed as the Enniscorthy Christmas Carol. But I'm waiting at this stage for people from Coolamane and Oilgate to start looking for a renaming, because as part of my research, I found that the place where the two men responsible for this song, for recording this song, I should say, William Henry Grattan Flood, he was the organist here in St. Aidan's Cathedral.
And that's why we're here today.
So it's so great to be here and to just hear and feel the resonance in this building, because this is where the Enniscorthy Christmas Carol was first sung after it had been collected by William Henry Grattan Flood and Fr Pat Cummins. So William Henry Grattan Flood was a musicologist, he was a historian, and Fr Pat Cummins knew that he'd be interested in this song. Rare at the time, there weren't many cars on the road. Fr Pat Cummins had a car, being a priest, he had access to a car. He collected William Henry Grattan Flood, and the story goes, and anecdotally I had heard that they had collected this song from an elderly couple in Oilgate, was one story that I'd heard. Now, I spoke, and this is in the documentary as well, to Margaret Franklin, who's actually the granddaughter of William Henry Grattan Flood. Now, she never knew him. He had died before she was born. But she relates in the documentary and tells us that they went out, indeed, they did. They went out to Oilgate around the year 1912 and collected from Father Cummins' family, because it's noted in some of the places that it's printed, it's noted that Father Cummins had learned it from his mother, who had in turn learned it from her mother. So there's two men responsible for collecting it, William Henry Grattan Flood, and then Father Cummins, and the two women responsible for passing this unique song onto us. Elizabeth Reck from Crowry, who would have been born around maybe the 1830s, passed it on to her daughter, Bessie Murphy, and she then passed it on to her family, one of which was Father Cummins that I've mentioned. And so they collected the song there in 1912 and came back, and seemingly the words were revised to some extent, and there's some differences if you look in the Songs of the Gael where it was first printed and the Oxford Book of Carols where it was secondly printed. So the first print was 1922, and there's slight variations and an extra verse, in fact, that's rarely sung in that edition as well.
It's a bit like Chinese whispers though, isn't it? These things over time, and there was no way of recording it at the time, these things grow legs, they change a little bit over time, don't they?
Exactly that, but it's really curious to see that the words were revised because, in fact, while this carol is unique, the text, the words, the lyrics are not, right? Yeah. Most of the words that are in the Enniscorthy Carol, the Wexford Carol, are found in English versions, except for the last verse in Songs of the Gael when it was first printed. So, to me, this says Father Pat Cummins probably wrote that verse, in fact. Because how else would it have appeared? All the other lines are from the English versions. There's much longer versions in England. And we know from notes in Songs of the Gael at the end of other traditional songs that Father Cummins put to Father Brahnock, who put Songs of the Gael together. We know that Father Cummins was a fine traditional singer in both English and Irish, and indeed he was a song collector himself because he contributed a couple of other songs as well as the County Wexford Christmas Carol to the Songs of the Gael book. Okay.
And is it true, Aileen, then that in the last year you managed to find the house in which this song was once written?
I did. I went out to Oilgate and I was given certain information to go to a place actually called Cummins's Corner, would you believe? The name of the man and the family is actually in the place name out there. Lord. And that the house had been situated down a lane. Now, it's long gone. But I managed to get in touch with two people who had lived in it back in the 60s. So Sean Quirk and his sister Anne, and they talked to me in the documentary. They didn't know about Father Cummins and a connection to the carol, but they were able to tell me. So for me, this was fascinating to think that they were inside the mud-walled, little two-storey, mud-walled house where Anne remembered going out to the pump even to draw water in. And this was the same house that Father William Henry Grattan Flood and Father Pat Cummins had visited to document the carol. We don't actually know for sure who sang it for them that day, though, because while it's written down that Bessie Cummins, Father Cummins' mother, passed it on to him, she had actually passed away by 1912. She died in 1904. So it may well have been his father, who we know from the census and everything else, was there. So his father and some siblings. So it's most likely that it was the father and the siblings, maybe Father Pat Cummins himself. They may have all sung it together. And that's where it was sung.
That's where it was sung. You referred, by the way, to the documentary. We should probably explain, this is going to be part of an upcoming RTE Nationwide documentary, isn't that right?
So what happened was I finished my documentary. I was still filming it this time last year. Look, you can only record about Christmas, maybe November, but December. So I had my documentary released in the premiere was in Enniscorthy Library mid-December last year. And so in the meantime, RTE have picked up on it, and Nationwide came and filmed here where we are, just beside where the choir sang for both me and Nationwide here the other week, and that's going to be out before Christmas. So they're actually featuring quite a few clips from my documentary in that feature, which is really nice because, as you can tell, it's a really interesting story. It really is. So it's great for it just to be told and put out there.
Yeah, brilliant, and it gives it great authenticity, the fact that they're using some of your own footage as well that you've gathered as well. A number of famous people have sung this song over the years, isn't that right?
Absolutely, like from Julie Andrews sometime in the 70s. Wow. To Tom Jones sang it in a little outfit with Katrina O'Leary, and I know Donal Lunny was involved in that project as well. The Voice Squad, lovely traditional singers that sing three-part harmonies. Anuna do a lovely version of it as well. But what I'm really interested in is actually stripping it back to the traditional singer that it was recorded from. You know, it would have been the solo, unaccompanied traditional style. It was only when it was put, it was quite visionary for it to be collected, for those two men to collect it, but by putting it in form, as they say, in musical form, it fixed it in a certain way, which means it's sung by choirs. You know, these lovely 4-part arrangements are sung by choirs all over the world. But I'm kind of interested in looking at that lovely air, the traditional air, the melody is very particular, and it's unique to this song. So this tune has not been recorded and elsewhere, is not associated with another song, has not been recorded as an instrumental piece of music, except in its connection to the Enniscorthy Carol.
And obviously, so the first sheet music then we know came from around the early 1900s. So this song probably at least we know, because it was handed down 2 generations already at that stage. It was around since probably the mid-1800s. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, absolutely. It would have been if they were singing it, yeah.
And I just wonder, like, in terms of the performance of it back in the day, was there any changes in style of traditional singing in that intervening period, or would this song have been as successful today, say?
So I would say that the traditional style of singing would have been very similar. I mean, Wexford has a very strong tradition in English language traditional style singing. You know, sometimes people talk about the term sean-nós, but sean-nós generally we'd associate with Irish language, but our Wexford traditional singing has a lot of those features, not the highly ornamented, but certainly you get that same flow, you know, the irregular metre, you get the phrasing and the ornamentation, very traditional style. And as we can hear from not just Fr Pat Cummins actually, there's another man who lived in Coolamaine. There's actually a song in one of Paddy Berry's massive songbooks that he's collected. Just the other day, I noticed one of the song titles is called Coolamaine, would you believe? Which actually points to the fact that there was a lot, you know, there was a traditional singing culture there totally. A man wrote that song in around the 1940s, and in it he actually refers to neighbours gathering and singing and dancing.
There you go. It's a song that you say you would often hear on the radio and in different places. Every time you say it seems to pop up somewhere every year, is that right?
Absolutely. Any of the radio stations, it gets great play because I think two of the key things that certainly I am drawn to it for are that melody, that unique melody. So it's got this modal quality where you have, let's say it's in the key of G, the F is there in F sharp, but also F natural, and the 7th is also flattened at some point. So it gives it that really lovely, sorrowful kind of sound at some point and then changes back. And the other thing is the depiction, like what it depicts. It is the nativity scene in a lovely, simple form. It talks about the animals, the shepherds and the wise men, and it's just got that lovely story really nicely wrapped up.
Well, we'd love you to give us a belt of it, if you wouldn't mind. We'd love to hear it.
I'd love to, and I'd love to sing it here where it was first sung, actually, when it was brought back here and first sung, directed by William Henry Grattan Flood. It wasn't the adult choir. If you think about it, the Mass, all the songs were in Latin at the time, so they couldn't sing it. Right. It was actually the children's choir here who were first directed to sing it.
How interesting. Well, no better location and no better woman to sing it for us in your own time.
Good people, all this Christmas time, consider well and bear in mind what our good God for us has done in sending His beloved Son. With Mary holy we should pray to God with love this Christmas day. In Bethlehem upon that morn there was a blessed Messiah Messiah born. Near Bethlehem did shepherds keep their flocks of lambs and feeding sheep, to whom God's angels did appear, which put the shepherds in great fear. Prepare and go, the angel said, to Bethlehem, be not afraid, for there you'll find this happy born, a princely babe, sweet Jesus born. There were 3 wise men from afar, directed by a glorious star, and on they wandered night and day, until they came where Jesus lay. And when they came unto that place where our beloved Messiah was, they humbly cast them at his feet with gifts of gold and incense sweet.
So there you go. I wonder, have many of you heard of it? I'd be very interested to know. And if you want to see Aileen's documentary, which is entitled Enniscorthy's Carol, you can go to her YouTube channel. Just search the words Aileen Lambert. It's pinned to the top of her YouTube list, I believe. So it should be relatively easy to find. And the feature about Aileen's documentary and about the story of the Enniscorthy Carol, the Wexford Carol, whatever way you want to call it, that's going to be on Nationwide on Friday the 19th of December. So yesterday fortnight, if that makes sense. So that's something I'll certainly be looking forward to seeing, and seeing the production on that and everything else, because it is a very, very interesting story. And as I said at the outset, not one that I was at all familiar with, if I'm being entirely honest.